Hello, America. The intelligence community makes confessions on a mass scale. We could observe this at countries A through Z too. They make confessions to a breaching method and to us all if we pay attention. Like for example, there are short words that need to be used regarding World Trade Center predicate acts. Channel 3 News attached me to fake conversations with themselves and the other. Fake conversations that were are the substance of their roles with the multiple natures of organized crimes and with other companies and their sources. There are increasingly collusions with the state judicial branch offices in conjunctions to that and to that and the difference of that, which is where and how that is manifest because a breaching method had roles, even with the design of the suburbs before America's founders were born, per roles with the predicate acts of the facts method with differences. So there are people that are pretending they don't understand others in comments. They have roles with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, other directors of the FBI and other agencies and military, including Marines, involved with the sense and sensibilities of Judge Napolitano that can't be defended without self-valuing roles with fake things and databases and collusions with it at each campus everyone went to and next to it. All the people from Weathersfield will agree with me. But and the ones who are pretending other, they're recorded lying. And they already put it, they're pretending passions and emotions tied to people who already pretended fake things in databases. Fake ties, fake nature ties to me. Some of them even their proofs they take pictures, have people they act and have people take pictures to make it look like other. Like they did that too at Quinnipiac University. Rick C. Paglione increasingly and others from other parts of the town and intercities have roles with Central Connecticut State University and intelligence on all sides of it, with and names with it, and New Britain, Connecticut, who have roles planted evidences on my street since I was a kid. And these are people involved with changing and faking, which actually digitally recorded with the FBI and Weathersfield Police and multiple Connecticut police departments. They have collusions with retired Weathersfield police chiefs and a house/S tied to their intimate family members and ties to them. Also with where they live, they moved years ago in 1984. In other words, these are people next to the state corrections offices with a Dave. I don't know his last name yet. As one of the people they give that one name of someone as one of the things because they sense who's going to speak about things properly or not, and they pretend for other reasons. In other words, this is also where and how they leak. In other words, by timing where people are going to walk and then put fake. Like I didn't even have one word of response, one word ever in real life with Robert Rodriguez. 2 times I knew he was planting evidence on my street. I recorded and communicated about that online. Then they took my Facebook page because the Facebook pages of Interbranch, they have roles with the World Trade Center and the Marines too with that, and Air Force families and neighbors of the Air Force families. And these are people I don't know all. I only know they sought me out to plant evidences, fake ties and fake natures of ties to me. And they don't even know the extent of it. Increasingly, these are sources of WTNH involved with the names next to them. There are proofs. If anyone from New Haven knows of a Fred Grisette, he's one of the ones involved with a whole bunch of different countries and a former director of the FBI, increasingly with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and educators of Jonathan Maiano, who lied about himself and others, sequence ships. He's been putting fake things and evidences with former mayors too. Also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with him at corners of streets and with their sequence ships, all sides of criminal and civil cases. A bunch of people from the Britain Superior Court have the FBI have their roles involved with a Rick C. Faglione and a Jonathan Maiano with sequence shifts, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me with my neighbors. I only know Rick C. Faglione involved with people from my street with wire crimes. His confessions about his roles with people with Connecticut courts and like named Brian Silver and people tied to his intimate ties and his roles with identity theft frauds against me with the Leahy family. That fake transcripts and ties to me. I never even saw them. I saw them a couple times on campuses walk by me, and someone told me their names. And I don't even know who told me their names. That's such a trick they do. These are the people that are supposed to be experts on making people understand and remember things, making things understand the right, wrong things. They're leaking too, right, when they're not supposed to. They have roles with the intelligence community attaching fake uses of alcohol and of drugs to kids and trying to pretend film delusions. No, all truths they're using for lies too, with their family members involved, all kinds of natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders. Also with the family members of other people with ties to databases. And then further at the campuses, there are neighbors of people named O'Brien. I mean, what is the name? Named O'Connor. There's a mother principal named O'Connor and a daughter principal named O'Connor. Increasingly, people that attach me to fake conversations with my family members through my life, as people with the interbranch switching and forging names and doing that, collusions with that, with their sources too, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same exact time, terrorists too, originally too. Our founders told us to explain how the breaching method had juxtaposed overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists with countries with the countries involved, northern colonies and southern colonies, more than 13, with so many torture, extortion, fact, nature, slavery, therefore physically laws against everyone, and collusions with at the same time, collusions with those again, overt criminal enterprise, private ones, and terrorists. When did that go away? From the roles with the interbranch black people. In other words, they still have the black and white. The only voice is allowed to be heard playing the black and white game, leaving out the black and white collusions with the identities of the law, and with the differences racketeering worse than war crimes, changing and faking what our founders communicated about that breaching method, replacing it right from our founders' communications, replacing it right from nature's. You should make them sit down when they start using names like Africa or Europe, and they don't make differences there. No, there's a whole bunch of different countries, fake integrity. Get them off the campuses A through Z on paper now. Now, fake branches bow and fall, still wall. Who disbelieves? Please, Judge Napolitano, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Well, I'll show you how to change. I'll show you how to force peace, hyper peace, a little piece of it, and we won't be able to stop making it grow in Palestine. If you really care about the Palestinian people, I'll show you how to deal with it with the predicate acts with facts and people pretending not to realize. People are self-valuing roles, not the directions, not to speak about things regarding nuclear. In other words, they don't even need to speak about that to speak about why and how they have to, because nature itself is showing us fear God. This is not, in other words, we're in systems hungering and thirsting through natures of jobs that are criminally important influence still to actively delusional. When did the private side of criminal enterprise stop having collusion with the difference of that? Well, in other words, it's a whole bunch of different kinds of methods of predicate acts with facts, roles with the torture, extortion, and fact, human nature, slavery of the people of the suburbs that were designed before America's founders were born, let alone New York City. Then you guys ask questions to yourself all this time. What causes the murders? The campuses are collusions with against the difference of those people, and they have been sustained against their parents, just like against our founders and against their parents. In other words, no one had free speech, even our James Madison was our founder, and his plan, and all the founders behind him, plural. In other words, they were stronger than even George Washington and some leftover soldiers he had. In other words. And George Washington used his plan to counter extort the rest of the founders. And then to force them to fight with each other, which is simultaneously forcing them to fight against slavery. But they couldn't do it directly because the breaching method was still entrenched with it, northern colonies and southern colonies. Our founders wanted nothing to do with it. People bring up George Washington leaving out James Madison's plan. And how no one had free speech, even though that's declassified. They're using their words, pretending not to realize. They have the experts leaning on experts, like the experts of the law, leaning on the experts In other words, they still have criminal uses of our founders' words, leaving out what they declassified about where and how and why. Everyone's words were extensive collusions against themselves and against everyone around them and against everyone as humanity itself. Otherwise, that body was sensed by the breaching method, that forced the torture, extortion, and back human nature slavery method, the murder method, and way worse. Otherwise they'd be sensed by it and that adapted to, including if they were majorities of people, including if they were everyone. That's what really why and how. They were crazy nations involved also with crazy companies of work criminal enterprise, private and terrorists with colonies north and south, sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly with things even like slavery. Slavery effectively used to measure and maintain. The breaching method against the Native Americans left out and replaced from being told and having been told properly. We shouldn't even have to worry. We notice that instantly when we bring up this subject. You guys leave everything pretending it's debatable. How that's gotten away with, that's recorded too. But say they can't afford to follow mandated law on a mass scale. Our countries have had collusions where they have been making subject treatments formally and treatments of crimes as collusions with all kinds of communication racketeering worse than war crimes. In other words, they can't even judge what's a lie or not because and they're pretending other. That's recorded too. But you guys don't follow mandated law. You have people in the comments recorded involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with the state of Connecticut judicial branch officers, corrections officers, personally and professionally involved with leaders of Facebook, and personally and professionally, and the difference of their guilt with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and sexual and medical offenders. Involved with the FBI director, Robert Luskin, and people from the Britain Superior Court, also at the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices before and after the World Trade Center attack, on and off the campus's Facebook page of a principal child abuser. They have roles increasingly with people involved with the World Trade Center attack before and after the attack, and years before that. These are people, there are ties between people at each campus I went that were forced, tricked, turned, and persuaded to act off campuses tied to the people putting predicate acts with facts in the campuses. Ray Reynolds will tell you this. I never tried to contact Ray Reynolds in my life. Increasingly, he's involved with people putting predicate acts with facts in database against me at each campus I went. Also with the names next to it, put the fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, federal evidences, crimes, rules, and collusions with predicate acts, whole methods of them. What do you think this is about? Black pupils, whites of eyes, and others, and it pretended debatable. That and how this is inseparable from the subject of slavery, where a breaching method reassigned black pupils, whites of eyes, communications, black pupils. Peer, get them on paper, one name and sequence into brain. Let me show you how to think. Let me show you what intelligence is about, black pupils. Get them onto paper now. And regarding my behavior too, there are distinctly predicate acts with facts methods against us if we use calm speech or if we use aggressive speech. And on mass scale, they've been pretending it's their free speech to bring up terms like mental health. The news locations know they have collusions with wire crime acts and methods. Know they have organized crimes and delusions. We can make them observe their own delusions if you get them to follow mandated law. Fox Connecticut News, WFSB, and WTNH and their sources. Offensively, they have been involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, collusions, all natures of crime scenes and next to them, and with the exploitation of the differences of that or the other natures of journalists and public television, and their roles with YouTube and Facebook with this Joshua Julian. Joshua Julian has many tied indirectly and directly to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with Whiting Forensics too, with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, first forced years apart. And people in my area will tell you, people on Pondside and other will tell you they were influenced to pretend fake things with their roles with the intelligence community. In other words, and the ones involved with the proven child abusers, leaders of kids, and people involved with increasingly with Harvard Hospital, many people tied to Ray Clark through time, and people tied to them, they plant fake evidences and have people act on both sides of things so people can report illusions, fake ties, fake natures of ties to people. That's very important because that's one of the motivations for their roles, because they have to hide how that was done. And they are shown that by the breaching method. There's a Michelle Sanquest further involved with a Lance Cuddy that the intelligence community recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed I was involved with them. Also with 2 speech class teachers I had, and people with people in my class that I never had personal conversation with. And one made an exception. They use that criminally for influence too, with people with the judicial branch officers and corrections officers. The girl who asked me if she could have the easy bake oven, and I gave it to her. I had no words. But there's increasingly a guy who said to my speech class teacher class that he was a partner of a Detective Dillon, and his family lived near the corner of Fairlane Drive and Carriage Hill Drive. Now that's increasingly involved with home break-ins through the year roles, totally different murders and untimely deaths too, and body dumping spots. They have collusions with time use, collusions with the names next to those spots in attic, including the serial killer and other killers involved with the FBI and courts with the whiting forensics through time, increasingly collusions with news, also on and off campuses with various natures of federal criminals before they were caught. They have whole predicate acts methods with them. WTNH is leaking. They have roles. The Air Force and the family members of probate court judges, they have roles with people on my street from other areas who planted predicate acts roles. And then from the people from the other areas, I don't know what all they. Some of them tried to make it look like Paul Kelly was influenced by the intelligence to be, in other words, to repeat that he was sitting next to me real quick. He said things. I didn't say anything in response to them. He has Paul Kelly is one of the ones all along Route 175 and conjunctions to it and conjunctions to that, like Ridge Road. He has roles with intelligence along Ridge Roads and its conjunctions with in other words, with the World Trade Center attack, other people with the courts, and with the comments on Judge Napolitano's website. They have the people in the comments who have with the Facebook pages of Wethersfield Police Department has a Joshua Schumack and his mother involved with sexual medical offenders of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders, as ones involved with the Michael Pandolf with all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions also involved at the same time with the interbranch and the state judicial and corrections offices and conjunctions to where the Wethersfield Police Department is now as people who also had collusions with names and conjunctions to where it used to be, increasingly as their roles with a whole bunch of different countries. In other words, I shouldn't have to, you guys are leaking these things too. I told you we're gonna go deeper into it. You don't get the Wethersfield Police on paper, one name and sequence. And regarding their professions, regarding the police chief Cintron, regarding their roles, switching and forging names. And I want them on paper too. The ones, a bunch of police reports since I was a kid, they've been putting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, and putting police reports with a charge with no writing. In other words, and switching and putting confessions tied to that. And the breaching method shows them they need to do that because the breaching method shows them they did worse. And it needs them to do the confessions too, by the way, so they can pretend other, because the breaching method has them making confessions to them, do itself at countries A through Z. Like when they speak about the principles of religion, or when they show this is against the principles of religion without quoting an actual principle. That's why the Old Testament and the Quran were designed to show self-valued rules with sequence shifting styles that can't value the principle where it knew that the people would be collusions with the people that attacking the religion and the people defending the religions with passions and emotions, and people with the difference of that where and how estimated they would stay, they would be stayed. Incapable of affording honesty of anyone else or themselves. In other words, regarding how and why, for example, the Old Testament says, only defend right here, where the names of the people, the sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. And that's before the part with the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of evil, of good and evil, for example. So people want to have debates about the other parts of the Old Testament out of sequence, leaving out that part that came even before Adam and Eve's story, where it says, it doesn't say defend the Adam and Eve story. It said before that, it says only defend here, and the part that comes before it, where there's a quality of diffusion, where an identity already has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously, but it's a quality of diffusion about where and how to make more positive. I mean, make more identity volume and more value / value progressions that are also positive unto itself. It's all things as itself at the same time. And that self being that which is showing us it is generating totally different species bodies of individual bodies with all group differences of each individual species body, and how the other species bodies too have it, individual species bodies of individual bodies, all group differences. That's how it's one of the ways we could discern its individual identity of value / value progression. Not us, not the other things we can discern, but as all things anyway. Distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously / hyper simultaneously. So then people want to debate things like that and start in these parts of conversations, valuing people, forbidding people short words properly with their evidences. There's a difference. Just because something is written, since founding, it is recorded that people have. What's that? In other words, using what's written in databases, pretending not to realize that the databases could be, were, and are as they are actually recorded, involved with organized crime acts and methods that included also collusions with the people that have only been allowed to speak about crimes, for where and how this breaching method measures and maintains the identities of the names of the people, the sciences, overtly criminally foreign influenced / insidiously and pretending other 3 ways. For the breaching method that is getting over on the nature of our identity of value / value progression, which comes with our means to discern that one distinct identity of hyper simultaneous nature or identity of value / value progression. Again, that which is not our species body is not other species bodies, but it is all things anyway. Shows us we could be systems tactical ulterior from its own, even individually grouped together, all of them that way. But it will only demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. But so we have self-valued roles with those demonstrations being and having been effectively employed by the breaching method, not as countries A through Z, but fluent through them and as them other ways. Blamed on other things, others, ourselves. Exactly the way it wanted and needs. And with all natures of instances and subject treatments, then people can't go back and afford the discernment of that proper too. Increasingly, all sides of criminal and civil cases and the intelligence names and the interbranch names and the names of their positions too, were our recorded timed collusion / S with all natures of crime scenes, including the World Trade Center attack, and with all sides as the names of the countries involved, including our own, with collusions that are also with a hyper foreign, and with the sides of the building itself, the World Trade Center towers, and the court next to it. The people with the name Scalora are increasingly involved with Wethersfield police planting evidences at and between campuses and having people act for others to record fake things and have people simultaneously perceive that. And in other words, a whole bunch of people tied to a Scalora family have roles with a whole bunch of different countries from with intelligence families from the Britons, Central Connecticut State University, involved with the Scalora family, intercities through time, involved with identity theft from fraud, slander, with kids that don't even go to the same campuses as other kids, and people increasingly in my area involved with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart. They had time collusions with that, and with the people associated with that, with the judicial branch officers and corrections officers, involved with mixed natures of abuses of each age of fact, nature of fact, and like mainly because their roles stacking fake things in databases and collusions with instances and pretending others simultaneously. This breaching method has mass communication, racketeering, worse than war crimes, roles, needs, natures, and styles, pretending others simultaneously. So the FBI has roles with a number of people in the comments. Also, the courts. And the Britain Superior Court has a bunch of people involved with Joshua Julian on YouTube and on Twitter. Also with Ray Cololo with sexual and medical offenders of kids. He has roles with medical offenders of kids at Hartford Hospital that are personally and professionally involved, also with organized crimes, with judges and prosecutors and overt criminal enterprises, private ones, with the houses and businesses next to Hartford Hospital through time too. They have a number of people involved with Los Solitos themed and other criminal enterprises, and people involved with threats against my neighbor regarding their roles, like with a Kerr family. But these are people that make all sides together. A Kerr family, a Cololo family, a DeMauro family said that they involved their intimate ties since they were kids with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. I don't know them at all. And the ones I did, they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They were influenced by even interbranch roles with sexual and medical offenses of themselves, and roles with victims advocates, with other natures of cases, collusion / with all natures of cases, and to force things not told on while pretending other and screening their roles, and the breaching method with their roles and uses of them remotely. Increasingly, the Britain Superior Court has victims advocates. I don't even know their names, but they're also forging and switching names roles with judges and prosecutors and their family members, increasingly involved with people that have been planting evidences on my street from other areas, and lying about what they think I said online. They're fishing, people are morons because they're coming through campuses that are morons. They're putting fake things, so you guys can't even think properly. Any moron could say, in other words, no, then I'm just talking. You guys leaving out with it. Fix the fake conversations with me that the news pretended. That's short and simple. You understand what I'm saying? Fix the interbranch switching names and refusing writing so they can stick more fake things in databases to hide how they've been doing that through time. Since before I was born, Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut, they were recorded involved with people in Wethersfield, Connecticut, and Intercities, Connecticut, next to all ages and natures of campuses. The intelligence community is recording, confessing, demonstrating, confirming. They have all kinds of medical corruption with triages throughout the country, with people in through intercities, with families also next to the campuses, planting identity theft, fraud, slanders, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and bodies not even present with their roles with the instances, but they have collusions with it. Like there are Russians involved and people from Ukraine involved with an O'Brien family and a Cololo family, planting evidences on corners of streets near schools and at the schools. And identity, fake ties, fake nature, fake motivations for it, sequence shifts. Increasingly, these are people with judges and prosecutors involved with the World Trade Center attack from Connecticut's roles with it, and their roles with people from Washington, D.C., increasingly tied to a Mike Pandolf I only know, who sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has collusions with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases and depositions, planting fake things, also with educators into databases, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. There were reports that his brother might have been killed or reported dead at the campus of or next to the campus of Trinity College, and that I never even met his brother. I only know a Mike Pandolf as a stranger seeking me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has rules of wire and mail crime and falsified police reports too, with Wethersfield Police Department and Connecticut's courts, and people all along Route 175 and its conjunctions, involved with a whole bunch of intelligence at Hartford and the Britain's locations, and like Central Connecticut State University, who also has roles next to all along Route 175 through towns, through time. People planting fake evidence, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. A Ray Cololo recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He was influenced to give me with people all along Route 175, like give me a bag with comic books in it and like things in it. And then, in other words, with people all along Route 175 has something to do with it. And their roles with New Britain Avenues in Hartford and Wethersfield. That's also one of the things that the family members of the courts can record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. And they don't know the extent of it because their family members and intimate ties also make confessions, demonstration, confirmations for themselves. And before I even knew they were involved with courts and the others I knew. That's why I understood and recorded to make sure they weren't going to lie about why and how. Eric Burgess made confessions to me and requests to help to me and demonstrations to me about people involved with Predicate X at Central Connecticut State University. I never saw him on the campus of Central Connecticut State University in my life, Eric Burgess. He's involved with Hartford courts, their family members, and intimate ties in the Britain Superior Court with people from at West Hartford locations, with a bunch of people from Wethersfield, out of the state judicial branch offices, out of the state corrections offices, and election spots in town offices, increasingly involved with, putting fake things in databases, involves all sides of criminal and civil cases, all natures of investigations, investigators in their campuses used remotely, criminally foreign tactically delusions raw, collusion/S, with location /S used remotely, where there's collusions that no one wanted, except for where and how it made A through Z have self-biased roles and/or roles sensing for the breaching method. Like when we bring up black pupils, whites of eyes, they don't have if someone doesn't have the capacity to discern where and how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, and that is inseparable from such serious subjects, inseparable from the subjects, like in Judge Napolitano's live streams on the YouTube channel of Judging Freedom by Judge Napolitano. In other words, you don't leave out how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, and a breaching method reassigned communications by nature with that, and reassigned with our founders themselves, communicated about how the breaching method reassigned with black pupils, whites of eyes, communicate. Black pupils, here, get them on paper, one name and sequence, here, attend. You guys are obligated by law to get them, if they want to deny it, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Wethersfield Police record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They do things like switch names, forge names, also with fire departments, stacking fake descriptions of what happens with instances. All sides of my house. My new and past neighbors will tell you this. In other words, they've been influenced to pretend other by the people like the Dillon family, involved also with all kinds of real estate crimes and roles with child sex offenders and people all along. What are they doing on Old Common with the people tied to this Annie Dillon and this Kevin Dillon, involved further with sexual and medical offenders of people, and the Wethersfield Police confessing and recording more people named Cololo and Smith involved with them. People at Harper Hospital too, involved with this Smith family. With putting fake things, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me in databases, and doctors that involved with forging names and lying about why and how I signed something. And I only did that because the guy said he was going to stab me in the arm and have people lock me down and stab me in the arm if I didn't do that. And that was after I already recorded them covering up what they did with the they had a guy yelling things, and they blame me for it. There are all kinds of tricks with people with the name Lombardo and Leahy, who a whole bunch of people from Hartford Hospital have roles with all kinds of organized crimes on my street, and roles with untimely deaths years apart, child abusers years apart, and murders years apart that were timed, brought up intercities, has something to do with their roles with the Intelligence Act next to the campuses, intercities with the same house /S, increasingly involved with wire crimes with the Wethersfield Police, wire crime methods with them, falsified police reports. These are increasingly people in comments involved also with Judge Napolitano, social media, and Fox News is involved with sexual and medical offenders with Facebook and themselves. They're lying. Those Facebook, their money. In other words, they're involved with abuses of the people next to the campuses, intercities with the same ones tied with child abusers, leaders of Kids Forest. These are differences racketeering worse than war crime. There's a CCSU campus. There's intelligence families next to it. that have been hiding what they're really involved with. See, they said, well, in other words, they were raised like punks. Get them on paper, 1, 2, 3, Z. I'll show how to get them right. Judge Napolitano, yourself included, please. You guys have your people in the comments changing and faking, preventing people short words, and they want to fish through what's said dishonestly. Get the interbranch on paper, one name and sequence. That's very clear. Wethersfield Police have roles with your Facebook page too, Judge Napolitano, and those of Fox Connecticut News, with more sexual and medical offenders of kids and other natures of organized crime with those same names. They have these people. In other words, which is with these people involved with the speaking about organized crime. In other words, what's his name? I forgot even the name. Sammy the Bull is one of the ones named brought up by a Kerr family. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed since before they had roles with the businesses and the houses on corners of streets, on Church Street in Old Wethersfield, and at the corner of Town Line Drive and South Sea Highway. They have roles with their educators. I didn't even have classes with them. They're putting fake things in the databases from other classes with former mayors, with judges, prosecutors, their family members, of work criminal enterprises, private ones at the same time. In other words, put fake ties, fake natures of ties to me with proven child abusers, leaders of kids. This Perone family and Kerr family with their educators, their roles next with the St. Anthony's Church next to Fox Connecticut News. Also with the Facebook involved with that. They took down my Facebook page too. Right, I told them I was getting ready because St. Anthony's Church and the building next to it has a whole bunch of people tied to some Mendez police involved with attaching me to a fake conversation with one of them at the Wethersfield Police Department, as ones involved next to Fox Connecticut News in Hartford, Connecticut, and also with the hallway of the Britain Superior Court with sexual and medical offenses of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and they're educated since they were kids, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, all kinds of natures of organized crimes with them, putting fake ties, fake natures of ties to people they don't even know. Some of them, like, they make fake quick exception walking by people and have, they can't. These are people on all sides of criminal and civil cases and the courts at the same time, putting the same federal evidence as crimes, same police forms originally and still. So they can't go back and have discern what's actually value. It's relative to where and how they have the audacity to pretend they could speak for integrity and treat such serious things like the impositions caused even by peaceful electrical generation, let alone while we're all still through, hungering and thirsting through systems and through natures of industries that are still criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, pieces of garbage. Fix the ocean better than free. In other words, and it should be fun for the people who want to help. Otherwise, it should be censored. That's how a species works proper. Black people. I don't mean fun their way. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence. Please, Judge Napolitano. In other words, and this is it. I'm not saying that Aaron Monte is related to Joe DeMauro, but he looks a lot like Joe DeMauro. Is involved also with criminally foreign influence takes on French history, American history, with his educators. He has confessions tied to statistics. As the people plan together, fake conversation be fake, change conversation be no, but and time uses. So Mr. Abruzzi is increasingly, my fifth grade teacher has a John DeMauro, and people at Central Connecticut State University increasingly involved with people with body dumping spots before and after I was in fifth grade, and criminal enterprises, and people that are timed collusions all along roads and routes, all along Griswold Street in Old Wethersfield. I don't think I've ever seen a Joe DeMauro on Griswold Street. I never saw him there. In other words, he confessed and recorded a Heather Hansen has roles with a home break and their narrative with the police, and they said they were just jogging at the corner of Carriage Hill Drive and Fair Lane Drive, which there was a more recent home break-in. I don't know, it's like a year ago now, but it has something to do with the fire departments too. They've been covering up things since. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's an Inspector Mike with them involved with switching their narratives to influences to it by their roles with intelligence next to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut, is increasingly involved with predicate acts with names from other areas on my street, and their ties to people in my area, and people on Fair Lane Drive increasingly involved with the military, with sequence ships, identity theft, fraud, slanders, predicate acts with fax methods. My teachers will tell you this because Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut had a number of roles with the people at the World Trade Center attacking spots next to it in Manhattan. And as people who had collusions with Washington, D.C. a number of ways too. There are proofs also with Philadelphia. In other words, black people. Get them on paper, one name in sequence, please. That's mandated law. Who disbelieves? Judge Napolitano. You are demanded by mandated law itself to get the interbranch refusing to identify themselves legitimately, who brought up your rules with Fox Connecticut News and with them with the Facebook predicate acts, changing and faking what's digitally recorded with the Joshua Julian on the Facebook page of the principal child abuser. Joshua Julian said he has roles with federal evidences crimes from people with conversations about what the news had printed years ago regarding organized crime. He has roles with my neighbors also with federal crimes with evidences regarding such fake motivations and passions for it, as their collusions with overt criminal enterprise private ones at the same time. Ray Claw has the word immature and psychedelics on YouTube as his roles with the corrections officers, judicial branch officers, and names next to and at Hartford Hospital. A bunch of people putting fake conversations, transcripts, and ties to themselves and motivations for it. Even their family members running into high lipoaggressions as patients, even if they're intelligence. In other words, increasingly people with the judicial branch officer, corrections officers, also with the prisons, with the same house next to body dumping spots involved. So Joe DeMauro and Ray Claw have West Hartford. They sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. West Hartford is involved with them through time, planting fake ties, fake natures of ties, like fake exceptions of where they could say that's an example of I went somewhere with them. I only know them planting evidences. They know this is recorded. In other countries who are involved at the same time, they're educators. They're involved with stacking predicate acts with facts. Get them on paper with the police chiefs retired too. This police chief Cintron and his family members. There's a Jessica Cintron that also their sources brought up. So we're gonna have to go into them now too, so you can show that why and how they won't get onto paper, and they're lying about why and how their motivations are. In other words, they're forcing me to use her name. I never was around her. I don't know her. Her extended family member, Mazzucato Bakery, is involved increasingly with the shopping centers, with the intelligence community, intercities like in Wethersfield, and with people like with Walgreens in Wethersfield. They're implying the security of them. See, the security is the only people that people can rely on if something bad happens. That's how they keep collusions with differences too, because there's a worse hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, so to speak, involved. So in other words, I even know the one who keeps staring at me and timing. In other words, at the place, we need to get them on paper. It has something to do with their roles with the corners of streets, Elm Streets in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, with the Mazzucato families and people tied to them, with retired police chiefs and FBI and foreign and domestic military. Jonathan Miles is one of the strangers who sought me out too, to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He has roles with investigators, sequence shifting, planting, faking, saying different things, recording that, having others record that. And the Britain Superior Court has a bunch of people involved with organized crimes and with child abuses, identity thefts and fraud, sequence shifts with the Mayano family and people tied to him. Involved also with my area that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that. And after they graduated, a Ray Claude graduated, a John Mano sought me out on my street, and the timing of it. He also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with people that destroyed my car and lied about the motivations of it. These are people pretending passions and emotions, roles with the people probably pretending the passions and emotions, people from Washington, D.C. and the World Trade Center, increasingly tied to a Mike Pandolf, people with the name Scalora, and at Central Connecticut State University, New Britain, Connecticut. They were a Scalora family is one of the ones who sought me out to people in my area confessed them involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids and untimely death rolls with doctors too and the agencies. And they have roles with conversations with people in Glastonbury who timed where I was going to be, the fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, lie about what they think, about what they, about that's what the Judge Napolitano's asking people what they think about things. They're not following mandated law. Get them out, fix the fake news. Get me off the fake conversations with them. There are proofs that his sources have too that rolls with all kinds of medical corruption involved, medicines crimes, more crime methods with a few dozen people. Then like monthly, not even like half a month. And then there are streets in Hartford and Wethersfield every day. That's how much money they owe. Black pupils. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. The British Superior Court also has some black KKK Confederate flag themes involved with their Facebook pages, with the Wethersfield Police Facebook pages too, and the FBI and the Marines involved with this, and the Air Force. What are the names of the neighbors of the Paul Kelly and the others involved with him, with the Air Force? And because these are people with WTNH planting evidences at corners of streets and next to the campuses, using their kids and themselves to put fake ties, fake natures of ties to others. Increasingly, there are probate court judges' family members, like ones with the name Della Fera and Spada. They reportedly have intimate ties too. And I only know the Spada seeking me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They have their family members too with the campuses repeating fake things with the intelligence community, and they're intimate ties with other probate court families with the same house /S that brought them into their narrative on off Old Common in the reservoir. They're planting fake ties, fake natures of ties to me, and changing and faking what's actually recorded. What is their motivations on off Two Route Highway and its conjunctions like Hangdog Lane and the Burlington Turnpike? These are people increasingly with those spots, like with a Chet Casper too. Sought me out, record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. I didn't even say have a word of conversation with my life. Increasingly, he's involved with people involved at the corner of the street, like Carriage Hill Drive and Fox Hill, with a Colon family and an O'Brien family planting evidences, foreign and domestic intelligence, people with sports figures, celebrities involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders too, pretending passions and emotions, making fake examples of free speech. Get them off. They understand what people say. Get me off the fake conversations with the interbranch. Get them on paper and on one name and sequence narrative. Judge Napolitano, I want a response for their confessions, even if it's a denial. With every police report that brought me before the Britain Superior Court since I was a kid, there are connections between those names with all those things I mentioned to you and the World Trade Center predicate acts and acting tied to it. No, I'm not even a lawyer. We're going to delineate the delusions from the criminally foreign influence, fact, cheap nature, quality, aspects, and natures of the experts individually grouped and as they are appreciated simultaneously as that which is incapable of appreciating what is simultaneously, actually, properly. The black pupils, yeah, saying to value countries A through Z. Bunch of fakes with natures of campuses, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, versions of that which nature itself shows us is functional, but we're not allowed to have it function proper. We're in how the campus smart sees. And pantheism itself serves a function by the republic for which we stand. That must be and stay led by that which is hyper invisible, but still discernible because it is true always. Well, not by any way. I mean, it is true always. Always. And further positive onto itself. In other words, like with slavery, it demonstrates we could take B systems, even though everyone agreed to be part of that. And it was only against one person. Nature will demonstrate with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. People increasingly will not be able to afford you know, make sure Dealer would demonstrate that everyone had collusions with that. The breaching method knew that such things would be demonstrated. There are all kinds of collusions with the intelligence community. It's only concentrated at medical campuses and educational campuses and fire campuses, and the difference of that. In other words, black people, beer.